You haven't answered my second question, why you're doing what you're doing.
It's solving the most complex problems by bringing people, data systems, and process together.
Oh, wow, I didn't expect that answer. By saying transformation, what exactly do we mean?
There's a hero, and they go into the underworld. They go to hell. The thing is, that's not what the stories are about. The story is about somebody who goes to hell and survives it to tell the story. Otherwise, we wouldn't know the story. If you have a bad process and you automate a bad process, it's just an automated bad process.
Hello, welcome back again. So in this episode of APAC Tech Insider, we have Anyati. In this episode, Anyati is going to share with us a lot of insights about the new emerging technologies, trends in Southeast Asia and Asia in general. And also, I would love to hear more about the cultural touch. And please feel free to share everything that you feel like you want to share in this session about technology. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So before we start the show, can you share a little bit more about yourself? What are you doing right now and why you are doing what you are doing?
Yes, so let me start. My name is T. I was born and raised in Germany. Currently, I live with my family and a 14-year-old daughter in Singapore for the last 2.5 years. And in a nutshell, I've been working for around 19-20 years with Siemens in many different functions and tasks around the world. And now I work as a Vice President of Market Impact in Asia Pacific, Japan for SAP Signavio, which is part of something what we call Business Transformation Management within SAP.
You haven't answered my second question, why you're doing what you're doing.
I think that's a really a great question. And this the human condition, right? I mean, it's always like, who are you? Why are you here?
Yeah.
Where are you going, right? I think this is really the three questions could be asked by a security guard, could be asked by the philosophers. I think the most important part from my point of view is, yes, you do need to have a purpose, a why, but I think you shouldn't be so fixated at that, and that why also changes with time. So, for example, in 2020, when every expat was actually moving out of Vietnam, I actually moved with my family into Vietnam. Because at that time, after working already 18 years with Siemens, I wanted to try out something new. And I wanted to really reconnect with my cultural identity being Vietnamese. So I went back to work in Siemens Healthcare. And you have to understand, I've never worked in the healthcare sector before. And here I was leading 80 people in the service business, as an example. So that was my why. But then people would actually also ask, but T, why did you then actually just stay for 2 years and then move to SAP? And there was also a triggering event when SAP decided to acquire a German company called Signavio. And Signavio was a leader in the market of business process management. And I said, wow, finally, there's something happening, because I have been, as a Siemens guy, 20 years the customer of SAP. But when SAP decided to acquire this quote-unquote small company, it wasn't that small at that time, then I said, I want to be part and drive that change. Yeah. So if you ask me in a one sentence, the why, it's solving the most complex problems by bringing people, data systems, and process together.
Oh, wow, I didn't expect that answer. Yeah, that help me to explain more. What do you like the most of your role and what you don't like at all of what you're doing?
Let me actually, and I love Greek mythology, or I love actually mythological stories. Yeah? So let me share with you one fact which a lot of stories share, even across cultures. There's a hero and they go into the underworld. They go to hell. The thing is, that's not what the stories are about. The story is about somebody who goes to hell and survives it to tell the story. Otherwise, we wouldn't know the story. So for me, I have been in the corporate world. I have done restructuring in Spain. I've been setting up ERP systems in Vietnam in 2004 and 2005. I have been in the crisis of COVID managing healthcare, which is really system relevant. So what I really love about this is that this continuity of different processes together with people solving complex issues. So I think what is really important for me, even I studied business, all my career I was never defined by the functions I had. I mean, just think about it. How many people do you know who have been a CIO and then switched to a CFO and speak 4 different languages, even they never knew that before? And I think this continuous change is something which really excites me. And that's why now that I had to encompass that in the past in Siemens, now I just want to bring it to any customer in the world, because I do understand that there's a lot of benefit in this business transformation management game. Yeah.
So anything you don't like about that?
I think everything what you like is also something which you could not like sooner or later. So I think, like, for example, I love seafood. But if I would eat seafood every day, it would also get boring. Yeah. So if I would have, let's say, all the time challenges and you go out and it's always like, pushing the limits, actually after a while it would also get boring. Yeah. So I think for me, what is really important is to be aware that not every day is puppies and ice cream and rainbows, but that's fine. I think really being able to have different aspects on how you define success as much as learning opportunities, I think that's the key.
Talking about SAP, most of the people think about ERP, the two words linked together. This is still true, or can you share some your own perspective toward that?
You know that 84% of global trade, really of global GDP, goes through SAP systems. But at the same time, really 80% of our customers are actually small, medium enterprises. So is SAP defined by ERP? For the past couple of decades, absolutely. But SAP now has so many different solutions and areas in the portfolio, whether it is intelligent spend management, whether it's a business technology platform, or where I'm now in the business transformation management sense, where you have BPM tools, process mining, where you have the digital adoption platforms of WalkMe, or enterprise architecture management with LeanIX. SAP has diversified the solution areas incredibly in the last couple of years. Yeah. So that's why for me, SAP is it's a global powerhouse. It's a software vendor, yes, but it's not so much actually about just ERP.
Can you share more about the new department?
Yes, the business line is called Business Transformation Management, and it's basically 3 acquisitions together in the last 3 years. So a little bit over 3 years ago, the company based out of Potsdam, Germany was purchased. It's called Signavio, and they are in the space of business process management. Yeah. So we are talking about process modeling, process mining, these kind of topics. A little bit over a year and a half ago, we also purchased LeanIX, which is based out of Bonn, Germany. So that's enterprise architecture, the whole topic. How do you go from strategy down to a level of business capabilities and application lifecycle management and things like that? Okay. That's the enterprise architect. And just 2 months ago, we purchased the Israeli company called WalkMe, which is a leader in the digital adoption platforms. Because quite frankly speaking, if you have the greatest technology, which is not used, well, then it doesn't matter either. So we do understand that our customers, they have great solutions, but they become also quite complex. And it's not only about SAP solutions, but it's also about non-SAP solutions. So the area I'm working in, which are these 3 acquisitions put together, all of these companies had customers before SAP, and those customers are also not always SAP users. So therefore, it's really, really important to understand the realm I work for is absolutely agnostic. Yeah. So it is really SAP and non-SAP solutions which we are catering for.
By saying transformation, what exactly do we mean?
We have to be mindful that the word transformation has been used so many times, it has already become a little bit inflationary, right? Digital transformation, business transformation, all of these things. I think in a broadest sense, we have seen that there's a lot of different factors which really drive a transformation. There's the market, there's internal, but also technology. And we have seen it through COVID. Before that, from time to time, maybe we would jump onto video conferencing. Yeah? So COVID has really changed that, as an example. We see that customers demand a lot hyper customization. That's really a market which has really changed, right? So transformation in the broader sense, when you go back, let's say from the 2015, 16, and we talk all about digital transformation at that time, the low code, no code and RPA and some AI around convolutional neural networks and not so much on the LLM side yet. Here we basically talk about how can we utilize digital technology to solve business outcomes. But if you abstract it, it's actually all the same. Yeah, it's the same today with, of course, different tools.
We've just mentioned about how technology and how it's been transforming after COVID time. Can you share more on the human touch point and how do you feel that technology is really transformed the world and transformed human being in the past few years?
Yes, actually, I think to make it even more clearer, also me as a father, let me actually share a personal experience I had with my daughter. I think at that time she was maybe 7 or 8 years, so a couple of years ago already. I asked my daughter, what is technology? And she said, for example, my phone. I said, that's a good example. She showed the iPad. I said, yes, that's another good example. And then I asked her, is this spoon technology? And she said, no. And then I asked her a little bit more about what characteristics does something have to be considered in her eyes as a 7, 8-year-old technology. And I figured out it was actually electronic. Anything where you need to charge or is a battery, she considered technology. But you have to understand, the spoon was invented at one day, and the day before it didn't exist. So that's also a form of technology. So technology is here to make human lives better, because before that, they didn't have a spoon and they just needed to eat or drink or whatever, do it in a different way. So when we are talking about how does technology transform, I do understand that to some people, the internet was the biggest thing. For other people, it was mobile connectivity. But if we can abstract on a much higher level, and instead of talking about interconnected cars with low latency, 5G, and AI image recognition, and we abstract all of this intelligent cars to something we call mobility, then we understand, no, that is the human condition for hundreds of thousands of years, which we are facing the same challenges. But what has changed is how we address them. Yeah. So that's why for me, technology is in its purest form a human topic, because it's supposed to make human lives better. And I'm a little bit worrisome at times because we see that actually technology makes the human condition actually deteriorate. Yeah. So that's why we have to be mindful. But then again, a knife can also hurt people, but a knife can also help you to prepare very good food in the kitchen. Yeah. So that's why technology always has the different sides to it.
Does that explain the question where we discuss about human-centric technology?
Yes. I mean, it's actually sad that I have to say human-centric technology, because all technology is human-centric. But at the same time, it is also true that a lot of technology is being implemented or applied, let's say, for innate purposes like bottom line, like growth, which I find boring, to be honest. For me, growth and a better bottom line is absolutely important, don't get me wrong, but it shouldn't be the primary topic. It's just a nice side effect to understand that our why is actually measurable. Yeah. So I had a lot of projects, like, of course, in the corporate world, we always need to talk about optimization, improvement, reduction of cycle times, and that results in money. But actually, you can also achieve those things by asking very qualitative questions like, how happy are you on a scale from 1 to 10? And then we're just going to measure it every quarter. And then we will see that there's a correlation, albeit maybe hopefully even a causality, to actually see that happy employees also provide better service, create better products. And that's exactly what we wanted in the first place.
So that's also answered by the thing that you shared before about the good thing and the thing you like and the thing you don't like about something, which means that there are two sides of a thing. If you like it, there must be something you don't like about it eventually later on. This means that's explain the thing where we talk about human-centric, right?
Yes, and not only. Yeah, I think what is important to understand is that the thing itself can have a valuation, but it always is established in the context. So, like if you hear me on in the presentation, I always drop the line where I say content is king, but context is King Kong. And I think it's really, really important to understand that the when and the where and the how also matter, not just the why and the what. Yeah, I think if you ask me, T, do you like TikTok? Then I say it depends. It really depends. And I think we need to really be mindful that often we try to choose a very specific situation to value something. And unfortunately, it's usually more on the negative side rather than on the optimistic, positive side of it.
So since context is King Kong, I would like to put that into the context. Can you give some example of how do SAP related or linked it to what we discussed just now about human-centric?
I think the classic example is automation. We always look to automate things. But in the context, if you have a bad process and you automate a bad process, it's just an automated bad process. It shouldn't exist at all. So I think it's really important to understand that the tool set of what SAP as a company provides now to our customers is so vast. And having the awareness of a tool set is just a first step. It's much, much more important to understand in which context should I apply which tools for whatever. And of course, this continues in the topic of the training, foundational models when we talk about AI. And everything now suddenly is AI. Like if else statement, AI. Bayesian algorithm, AI. And for me, it's very, very interesting. And the analogy I always make is like some executive leaders, very, very important people, they talk like, oh, I really, really love the internet, but I have never heard about the company Google or Amazon. What is it? And that's actually how we deal with AI. It's so easy to put the word AI in your mouth. And then I ask, okay, please, in one sentence, explain to me the difference between machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI in the aspect of AI. Then nothing. And I ask you very, very honestly, do you know construction, how to build a house?
Yeah, I know the mechanism, but I'm not sure if I know how step by step to build a house.
Correct. And that's absolutely fair. But you would not go out there on a keynote and say, I'm the master house construction builder. But at the moment, everyone is an AI expert. And, I always actually open a little bit provoking. I always say, I'm here to provoke, but not to offend. And I was sizing the audience, one of the keynotes I took, and the audience was either coming from the enterprise architecture or coming from business process management. And I asked who is from BPM, and then some people raised their hand, and I asked who is from enterprise architecture. Some people raised their hand, and I obviously saw it wasn't 100% of the room. And I said, okay, then the rest must be AI expert. Oh, and everyone got really offended. And I said, why do you feel offended? You can't be offended. I provoke you, but you being offended is your choice. And this is exactly some of the cornerstones I also believe is what makes us so human is we do have the concept of choice. And I think this is something where you can go sometimes left and sometimes right. I know you like this food, but you can still say no because you might have your reasons. and the context dictates a different outcome. And that, I think, makes it interesting.
That link back to the saying that one of the biggest right of human being is the right to have freedom of choice. And we choose what we think, we choose our perspective toward life, and we choose our perspective toward what we consider as fact. So coming back to the story, in what ways do you feel that technology can serve as a medium for expressing human creativity, empathy, and connection?
Let me give an example. Sometimes maybe you see these pictures where we talk about, let's say, digital transformation. You see the picture of a hand robot shaking the hand of a human hand. Yeah. And then on the other hand, you think about Terminator and Skynet. AI will nuke everyone and everyone dies, right? It's just like these two pictures. The thing though is, it's not man versus machine. It's man versus man who created bad machines. So what I'm trying to say is that technology, just like music, just like sculptures, just like paintings or food, is a human craftsmanship. So therefore, all of these things serve a human purpose. Could be a utility or could be for the emotions, like in arts. So when we talk about, let's say, empathy, and by the way, I also think empathy is a good step, but it's actually absolutely not enough. Yeah, I can explain a little bit, or spoiler alert, it's more about compassion than empathy, okay? What I want to say is that if technology, the robots, the AI, can take care, then we can actually focus and rediscover our humanity, which got lost. Because there are so many things which the humans were, are, and will always be better than machines, which is creativity, empathy, compassion, and all of these things. So I do believe, which is a little bit ironic, I do believe that I'm not worried that machines take over. I'm worried that humans become like machines. We look into our phones, we don't think about things anymore, we just follow. This is what I'm worried about. On the other hand, I do also understand it is only through technology that we can actually rediscover our humanity, so that we will be able to focus more on empathy, compassion, and these things.
Never mind if it's off the topic, but I personally want to hear more about your definition, empathy and compassion. I feel like this could be a topic that you would feel happy to share about.
I think it's actually, it's very simple. I can have empathy for the hardship of pregnancy of my wife. I feel with you, but it means nothing. I shouldn't feel just empathy. I should feel compassion. Compassion means even that I will never understand what pain you're going through. I'm here to help. And I think, for example, we have seen it also during COVID with nurses. Nurses can't feel the pain of a patient. They don't need to have empathy, but they have compassion to help nonetheless. So what we have now is a weaponization of such good words and good concepts on LinkedIn, where we talk about empathetic leadership. What does it mean? How can you be a non-empathetic leader? So that's the thing where I'm really not worried about people saying the opposite. I'm actually worried about people saying the same, but actually crashing the party, so to speak. So that's why for me, if we go to a basic foundational level, then we also need to understand, yes, there's sympathy, there's empathy, but we should actually focus on the compassion. Let's not talk about treat others like you want to be treated. Sorry, it's not good enough. Treat other people like they want to be treated. It's not that hard. It doesn't require an MBA or anything. And this is exactly what we see, especially in tech, that some people say, oh, developers, they are very focused on the technology, but yes, they also are very emotional people. I mean, you're a tech company with a lot of developers, but I think this disassociation from humans and technology, I think is really going awry. Yeah? I think this is really, really dangerous because I think it anyway belongs together. You can't put it on two sides of a coin because they are actually part of one anyhow.
Did you really keep that in mind in one of the projects that you have done? And eventually it's coming out that the outcome is like surprise everyone with that idea integrated in the project.
Absolutely. Actually, this and that has actually been documented also quite well. So the project was called Order Management for Tomorrow. And it was really 2015 we started when in Siemens I was the head of order to cash process on a global level. And you can imagine that from the non-emotional topics, it was really about standardization, harmonization of processes. It was about automation and all of these, let's say, metrics, KPIs. On the other hand, though, there's this thinking that why would a person want to have a bad process? Actually, people don't. And then people would actually think, no, they want to have a process so they become relevant, which is not true. I can assure you that any stupid, mundane process, which requires a person's pushing the red button every 12 seconds, if that doesn't create any value, people have no problem of getting rid of that process. So what we actually then understood in that project, yes, you still need to cater to, let's say, the corporate language of automation and all of these, let's say, innate KPIs. But on the other hand, we were really focusing on NPS and CSAT and other, let's say, qualitative happiness indexes, so to speak. And one of the topics, this is like a little bit fast forwarding. Once you reach all our, let's say, boring KPIs, and I'm just downplaying it, we actually just ask questions like, do you still have to take a lot of overtime? Do you spend more time with your kids? And it's a simple yes-no question. And no business case, no dashboard, just a simple temperature check. And people were happier and they had, let's say, more meaningful work. Yeah, so I think this is really important. And the irony is the actual science shows that. So it's not that I'm here all fluffy, tree hugging, hippie. The science actually shows that. And I think this is really, really sad that I'm a little bit of a hopeless romantic after COVID. I actually thought we had a wake-up call that we can be kinder. But I don't think that actually humanity has learned so much after post-COVID. Yeah, of course, it also depends on your own experience with COVID, but I'm not giving up quite yet.
Hopeless romantics. That's the word you say. All that is very interesting. And I try to link back to the background, link back to the point where you come to Vietnam, different culture and all. But what I was so curious is, do you have an inspirer or who or what inspired you in the way you work?
I guess what inspires me is pain and suffering. Because the thing is that, I have so many scars and calluses. So it doesn't hurt anymore. But you still remember that pain. And what I do is just try to have, let's say, processes or kind of solutions which went through that hell. I come back to tell about it so that other people don't have to and that they can create much better things. So if you are my employee, I would be so happy that you are so much better than me after 3 months. I wouldn't get jealous. I think this is really, really important to understand that my value is not what I know. My value is what I share, which Ginni Rometty, the former CEO of IBM, always said. And I absolutely believe that. Yeah. And I think this is what really inspires me to actually see how much people can achieve even more with less effort when you were able to contribute in some way to that.
If there's just one saying, if one day someone give you the microphone to say one sentence, but the whole world gonna listen to that, what would you say?
Probably that I can talk for a very long time without taking a new breath before you're still thinking about that one sentence. No, I don't know, actually. I think this is also a notion which has become, let's say, very weaponized. Is like, explain it like I'm a 5-year-old. You got 8 seconds. And all of this, I'm like, why? Honestly, I don't need to tell the world in one sentence what I want to say. I could tell a joke maybe. Probably I would say, my hair is black, my blood is red, my skin is yellow, I'm a German. Things like that. What I'm trying to say is that we can't put all our effort and energy into this 15 minutes of fame, or this engagement hashing and this popularity contest, beauty pageant contest, right? I think when you want to share something, then that context will decide whatever sentence I will say. Yeah. And quite honestly, it's not right now.
Let's say that there's one thing you can share with the world to help them to live better, to have a better life, to inspire people, empower people, to leave an impact or your footprint.
It sounds great. I think it would probably be a perfect Instagrammable sentence, but I think that's not that would not be the person I am. Yeah, I wouldn't want to deduce myself into one sentence. And maybe if I share one quote, I like this one as well. Forget about the person itself. Elon Musk said it, but he said, "I'm no one's hero or savior. I just want to think about the future and don't be sad." And I think there's something to it. I'm not here. And I think this is also, let's go back to traditional stories like Lord of the Rings. Frodo didn't want the ring. The ring came to Frodo. Yeah, so I think when you are bestowed this kind of privilege or this kind of responsibility, it's not for you then to, let's say, capitalize on that and use that moment. Although I do understand sometimes in life there are certain, let's say, inflection points where you have that forum. But honestly, I couldn't think ahead of that because then it wouldn't be authentic for my standards.
Yeah, I understand where it came from. And I really love the saying where you say black hair and yellow and I'm a German. I love that. And I think that also inspired a lot. But yeah, we need a context. So maybe another time I will come back and actually put in a microphone in front of you. Understand that you have been in Vietnam for a while. And also right now you're based in Singapore, right? On cultural perspective, is there any different culture in how they acknowledge or how they perceive technologies in general?
Culture has always been a very complex sociological topic, right? It used to be, let's say, clear, defined in terms of religion and food and geographies and language, like the basic ones. Nowadays, we are in a global network, things are much more intertwined, right? Also, me being a German of Vietnamese background, marrying into a Vietnamese, a lot of the times when we have conflicts, she says, "I don't care, you don't get my culture." Yeah, so culture is like the ultimate card you always pull out, right? I definitely understand that there are certain behaviors which are different depending on the culture. But what I simplifying must say is that in terms of adoption and the positivity, optimism towards new technologies, it's much higher in, let's say, in Asia than it would be, for example, in Europe. Okay? When you go to, on the other side of the ocean, if you go to the Americas, obviously in North America, it's very much about the commercialization, the monetizing model. Yeah. So it's about this. I think, but if you are even draw down a little bit in Asia, it can't be any different when we talk about, let's say, digital transformation between China and Japan. It's both Asia, but they're still very, very distinct. Yeah. So I think what is really important to understand is like, if you take this 3 billion people and put them all into a pot, it's possible that their center of gravity moved towards one direction in comparison to the other billion. On the other hand, within that 3 billion, you still have day and night. And let me give you a very, very specific example. So the first time in the early 2000s, I went to China and I had a credit card, couldn't use it. Okay, had to have cash. A couple of years later, I come with my credit card. They look at me as I was living behind the moon. You're still using credit cards? We just use QR codes and WeChat and all of these. They looked at me really like I was a caveman. Okay? Now, think about the digital transformation in Japan. If you look at the vending machine, it accepts basically everything. Credit card, debit cards, the prepaid cards, coins, everything. Why? Because digital transformation means everyone must be part of it. So elderly people or children also need to be able to buy a drink at the vending machine. That's a Japanese way of transformation. Not so much cutthroat, do or die, like in China. So I think really when you are in Asia, we see that even within Southeast Asia, the adoption of technologies is already quite different. Yeah. Generally and simplified speaking, there's much more, let's say, optimism in trying out new things. Yeah.
Besides AI, there's any other trends that is noticeable to your point of view?
I think when we talk even about AI, we need to separate it a little bit. I think around maybe the early 2000s, when we talked about convolutional neural networks and we had all the image recognition and then the chatbots started, that was great. And now for the last 3 years, we are in the generative with the large language models, and different topics of AI. But sorry to say, it's still applying different algorithms into a context and then mapping it to a business problem or to a life problem, which could be cancer, yes or no. It's one topic. Or can you prepare thousands of documents into a paragraph, right? So this is the business need. So the business needs are also evolving, but we can address them with different kind of technologies. And I think we need to be very mindful about the waves of technologies which come in and go out and then they converge and do different things. But I still believe, for example, in distributed graph database networks. I still believe in quantum computing. I still believe in even the blockchain, or hyperledgers and all of these things. But I do understand that it's very hard for them to scale because we just talked so much about it and did nothing. Yeah, decentralized finance and stuff like that. I mean, how many people can actually explain to you how does Bitcoin really work? Yeah, and I ask 2-3 questions and then I see, maybe not today, because there's really a dissonance between the Germans would say the Zeitgeist, that narrative which is existing versus the actual application. Yeah, so still a lot of different technologies around, but I think it would be still fair to say that there is no technology around which would not also be fueled and driven by some AI use cases as well. Let me give you just one concrete example. Let's say tomorrow comes COVID 2.0, much more resilient. Okay? Then the question could really be, should I research more about mRNA and all of these vaccines? Or will I actually just feed the AI so that the AI will find the vaccine? Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, on the way of the AI trying to find the vaccine, the AI will also solve a lot of other problems. For Elon Musk to go to Mars, he doesn't want to go to Mars. Well, maybe he does. But on the way to go there, he's building solar panels. He's building satellite networks. He's building reusable spacecraft. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is there is a super narrative towards some dream, but along the way, we will find out a lot of different things.
And that's how we call technology. Anything new that serves human being, anything that with or without the clear purpose in the beginning, but eventually it serves human being.
Absolutely. And that's why now I can really do it in one sentence, my definition of transformation. Because often we look at the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. And I really love this picture. But actually speaking, that's a metamorphosis. When we talk about business transformation, there are two things, and this can only be human. It's courage and intent. Because the butterfly does not decide to go back to a caterpillar, or the caterpillar doesn't decide, you know what, I want to skip that butterfly and cocoon part. So that's why these are the natural evolutionary steps. When it comes to business transformation, nobody will become resilient automatically. Nobody will become sustainable automatically. We need to have courage and intent in order to drive that change. And that is basically the kind of transformation I talk about. And my job is to provide all the necessary tools in the kitchen, all the knives, all the pots and the pans. I need to provide the fully stuffed ingredients in the fridge. And by the way, if my cookbook recipe says 500 grams of sliced onion, I also provide you the sliced onion. Because then you, with courage and intent, can craft the best meal.
Courage and intent.
Courage and intent.
Which means that I want to do it, and this, so it answers that about the willpower and also about the definition of a clear goal. Just now when we talk about transformation, I heard that you mentioned about sustainability. So sustainability is thing that people talk a lot about that, and it's going parallel with technology. So I want to know, in your own definitions and your own perspective towards sustainability, and also how that integrated in what you're doing as SAP.
Actually, I don't even need to give my own definition of sustainability. I think just get informed of the, for example, United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. There are 17 of them. And I think what is really important, at least as my personal takeaway, is that we need to understand that the 17 goals are actually always in a sequence. So even, for example, I love the topic of gender equality or education. We need to understand that the number one we need to fix first is poverty. So that's why for me personally, I also am very interested in the topic of marine pollution, plastic pollution in the sea. But I connect it with the topic of alleviation of poverty. Yeah. When it comes to the solutions which SAP provide, of course, we have a lot of topics around CO2, carbon neutrality, but also as well in energy consumption. And then maybe just to tie it as a small bridge, of course, a very, very critical topic when it comes to AI, because right now AI is really, really power hungry.
So to wrap up the session, the conversation we're having right now, if there's one sentence you can share to young people, to the next generation, to whoever doing their business in terms of technology in general, then what could be that sentence?
There are actually a lot of sentences. It's not that I need to think of one. I just need to make the choice of which one. I think right now I feel like this one is that in every acorn or a seed, there's 1 million forests. And I think that everything is impossible until it's not. And I think this is really something which we need to understand, that the thinking of yesterday, which created the problems we have today, can't be solved in that same way. So we need to also have a new kind of thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.